So what I'm doing here is I'm removing the dirt and the debris substrate, if you want to be fancy, from the fuller on either side of the nail heads here.
The fuller is that little indentation part.
Yes, the groove. It makes it easier for me to get my jaws in here on my crease nail pullers, so I can get a hold of that nail and pull it out like that. And this is interesting. These nails are made by Capewell. They have a special coating on them to keep them from corroding, and they're only 5.5 weeks, even with that special coating. I don't know if you can zoom in on that, but the nail just pulled right off the shaft, or the head just pulled right off the shaft of the nail. Not a big deal. They stamp out a bajillion of these things every day, and every once in a while that'll happen. I just had 2 of these happen earlier in the week, where I went around and pulled the nails out, and I found the clinch still up in the shoe. Same kind of deal. And again, it's not a big problem. You just have to be aware of it. Especially if you leave a clinch up here, you might grab it with your hand and cut yourself.
Yeah, because they do get sharp.
Yes, they get very sharp. There we go. So the way this tool is made, these crease nail pullers, it's designed specifically to grab the head of that nail. And you can see how that nail is deteriorated in just 5.5 weeks, and it's been relatively dry. Here's a brand new one next to it.
So you think that's from where, or from the weather? And
that's from weather. That's from weather combined with impact on the shoe and things like that. And that's why it's so important to have regular intervals of farrier care. I recommend 6 weeks, and if you go a little less than 6 weeks, that's okay. The head just pulled off of that one too. Huh. Now this is interesting. Well, I think I might contact Capewell and ask him if something was different about the most recent run of nails or something. That's really odd.
But they are a copper alloy, maybe?
No, these aren't the copper alloy. The shoes are.
But not the nails.
Not the nails. They just have a coating on the shaft of the metal nail. So this has been on for 5.5 weeks. I can compare this to a new shoe. I was curious to see how these would wear compared to steel. And it looks like it wore more than a steel shoe would. I'm not going to reset this shoe. Yeah. When I take the pad off, you'll be able to see it a lot better.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so you can really see the difference here.
There you go.
Is that a good view for you?
Yeah.
So my rule of thumb when I reset a shoe is, if it's worn by 50% or more on the foot surface or the ground surface, I replace it. And this is clearly very well worn. Did its job, worked well. Time for a new one now. Just cleaning up our sole. Now this is a foot that was just covered with a full leather pad for 5.5 weeks, and it's still very healthy and in good shape. Probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that Sugar just has nice feet. She doesn't have any thrush or anything like that. So
I'll be curious, since we've had it for what, 6 months now?
Yeah, since December.
If the food that we feed has made a difference in how flexible her sole was, actually.
Yeah, she was very thin-soled, and I don't know if that was attributed to nutrition or just being trimmed a little bit too short right before we got her. But I'm really happy with what I'm seeing since she's been here. She's doing very well. Definitely does better in shoes than without shoes. And that doesn't mean every horse has to have shoes. It's all case by case. Depends on
time of year, weather,
what they do.
What are they standing in?
Yeah,
what's their nutrition?
Where do you ride them?
Genetics.
Yeah,
That's easy for me to say.
I wish they could all be barefoot. I could make my rounds on a motorcycle with a sidecar for Yoshi to ride in.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't need all this stuff. That's a really nice foot. Nice looking foot. Long and typical. Check my medial lateral balance again. Just about have it. There we go. Cheddar cheese. Have it nice and flat. We have our medial lateral balance. Now there's just a little bit of a flare on the bottom. So I'm going to dress this. This is called dressing it back when you bring the foot forward. I just want to go straight down so I can make a nice straight line from the coronary band all the way down to the ground, all the way around her foot. No flare. A straight hoof is a strong hoof. You want to get it so the bottom of the foot is the same shape as the top of the foot. If you look at the hairline shape, the ground surface of the hoof should be the same. And then you know you have a nice symmetrical foot from top to bottom. Alright, so looking at the shape of that foot, there's primarily 5 different shapes of foot, which is taught in some schools. That's why I learned. This looks like what I would call a spike. It's almost like a boxy shape, straight down the sides, kind of straight across the toe. And I have a chart in my trailer that shows the different shapes. So
I would have called that boxy, but
boxy. Well, it's called spike.
Which makes no sense because spikes are pointy.
You're a spike. All right, so
whoever named that needs to relearn what boxy and spiky means.
Well, the other one's called Tag, and one's called Ralph, one's called Norman, and the other one's called.
Well, he must have named him
the
after
other
his
thing.
dog.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm researching that.
Well, the one that's called Ralph is because it's a combination of everything, and it's a mess, and it's hard to shape. And he knew a professor in college whose name was Ralph, so he said Ralph was difficult, so he named a difficult foot Ralph after him. I'm serious.
I'm sure you are serious.
Yeah. Okay,
I would have called it hot mess.
4 3/4. And if you look at this foot, you'll see that the lateral heel is a little bit longer than the medial. That's okay, that's her. So when I make this shoe and I hold it up and look at it, it's going to look like I made a crooked shoe. But I'm not going to make a crooked shoe. I'm going to make a shoe that matches this girl's foot. See that? See it?
I did, I see that.
This
What am I looking at?
It's just a little flap. It's a little bit of heel bulb off to the side.
Yeah.
And here's one over here. Some farriers leave these. If your farrier leaves those, don't think that he or she is cutting you short. Sometimes, like her foot's nice and dry and hard right now, and so I don't have any hesitation about removing those. But sometimes when this is wet and soft, if you cut that off there just for appearance sake, you can actually make it bleed a little bit. It's not a big deal. I would compare it to a shaving cut, but I'd rather leave a little tag on there and let it lose itself later than cut it off to make it look pretty and not force bleeds. And I think it's important for owners to be aware of that. The farrier's not trying to cut corners; they're being cautious. You know, so you don't want to make your horse bleed for the sake of a cosmetic appearance.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, hey there. Sneaky. Oh, Jane, she's wrapped around the pole.
Hey, sugar, where are you going?
right, so I'm gonna make a rim pad. You can buy rim pads pre-made, or you can just buy full pads and make them as you go. I think the cost is the same. So you trace it out like that, and then you make it into a rim pad. Just like that. So what I like to do is take out the middle of my pad like that, and then it makes it easier for me to work my way around. Personal preference, there's probably 20 ways to do this. This is how I like it. And I love these pad cutters like this one I have here. It's a Duval. Just makes it so much easier. You cut it out by hand.
Oh, I can't imagine doing that by hand.
Yeah, they make some pretty sharp tools. They almost look like tin snips, but
Yeah, but when you have arthritis like I do.
yeah, this is pretty slick right here. All right, so now we'll come over here and I already drilled the shoe. Drilled out the pad. I'll put a rivet through here. Or I'm going to turn this into a rivet. This goes through here like that. Cut off the excess a little bit. We don't need all that. And we'll have a big bobble on there. And then you just flatten that with your hammer. And I flip it over to the rounding side. Work my way around, make a rivet. That's how I used to make rivets back in the old days before they had rivet guns.
Before they had frogs.
Yes.
An army of frogs making rivets.
Rivet.
Sorry.
That's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. The frog rivets. Yeah. Rosie the Riveter. Right, and then old World War II.
Yes.
There we go, just like that.
Ta-da.
Cool beans. Pad now.
Taking off excess pad. Okay.
Excellent way to move skin from your digits if you're not paying attention. I read that in a book once.
The book of dumb things Scott Hunter did.
That's right. That's how you learn. The hard way.
So I have a question.
This is kind of dark now because it was in the fire and all that, but when she starts walking around, it'll polish up and look like that again. Yes, ma'am, what's your question?
So you talked about relief. Flip it over. Where your hands are.
Relief.
Yeah. How you take out, you relieve that?
Yes.
So what about this?
So even with the pad, I still relieve the foot surface of the shoe by removing material. You can do that with the rounding side of your hammer on the anvil, or you can just put it at an angle and remove some of the material on your...
So that leather will conform to that material you took away from the shoe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I don't want sole pressure, and even though I'm
Right.
putting a pad on there, you know, if there's a metal shoe between the pad and the foot, it can still put pressure.
Well, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, yes, that's a good question. And so, you know, the devil's in the details. And so sometimes we might not even think of that because, well, we're putting a pad on, but it still can put pressure because that material is still there. So even with a pad, the way I do it is I still remove material so there's no sole pressure going through the toe.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Here we go. Just chew on here. All right, so when you're nailing on a shoe with no clips, the thickest part of the wall, for the most part, straightest part, not thickest, straightest, is back here like by about your number 3 nail hole. So it's a good idea to start back here, not up here, because your flat shoe with no clips will have a tendency to migrate back when you're nailing with no clips. So it's good technique to start in the sidewall where it's straighter, because then your shoe stays where you put it. Yep, it's right there at my toe. That's what I wanted. That's another one of those little details. Oh, oh. What a good girl you want to show. Some big sweetie. And that's because of how I drove them. I aimed it where I wanted it to come out. Hold on, sweetheart. Hold on. Clean it off with sweat on my head.
Yeah. So she's a former reiner, and it takes her a little bit to stretch.
So I just wait.
We're just waiting for her to relax.
There, she's starting to relax. There it goes. Always better to wait.
There we go.
Yeah. I need to stretch too, apparently. She's still pulling on me really hard. There, she relaxed a little bit. You know, and that's okay. I'm not going to yell at her for that. She's not a bad horse. She's doing the best she can to be good. And it's important for me to understand that and recognize that. And do my best to accommodate her. It's not asking too much for me to just figure out the right spot where she's comfortable. I owe her that, not just her, but any horse. I don't like to just start screaming and yelling at the horse because they're not doing exactly what I ask it to. It's important for me to take a look and see what it is I'm asking and where I'm holding them. Do I have them out too far? Are they arthritic? You can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. It's kind of like that when you're working on horses. Now this will be interesting. On the lateral side of the shoe, two of those nail heads popped right off, but the nail didn't come out. It's still in the foot, in the hoof wall. So you'll get to see that in a minute. If you look here, she still has two clinches in her hoof wall, but she no longer has a shoe on her foot. Because when I grabbed the nail head to pull it out, it simply pulled the nail in half, and I still have to get that out of there. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Easy, honey. So I'll take my, it's called a clinch cutter, stand that up. That one's already up a little bit. That's the old clinch that was folded over. Now they're standing up. And I'll grab those with my pull-off tools, hopefully, and pull it out. There it is. See that?
Yeah, hold stuff. Yep.
And then so here comes another one. That's not going to hurt the horse. I mean, it was already in there, but you certainly don't want to leave that in there.
No.
Might interfere with, well, the main thing I don't want to do is run my nippers around this hoof and pull and squeeze my nippers through a metal nail shaft. That's not what they're designed for. Okay.
All right, so letting her stretch again. Is there anything different anatomy-wise that you're looking at?
You mean hind foot versus front foot?
Yes. Yep, because we're on the hind now.
Well, the main difference is, when you talk about hoof pastern angles, on the front we like them to be between 50 and 55, and on the back we like to keep them between 52 and 57. So that's just a little more upright in the back, and the reason is you have a hock instead of a knee, and the weight bearing and the action of the limb is completely different than the front, and we don't want them to be too low in the hinds. We want them to be just a little bit higher so they can maximize their way of moving.
And that's the bars.
Yeah, those are the bars. You want to just keep those tapering down into the foot slightly. Otherwise it can cause pressure against the foot and be uncomfortable. Here you go. The bar is actually a continuation of the hoof wall. There's a very well-known farrier in the industry. His name's Danvers Child. I believe he's in the Hall of Fame. And he actually likens them to a flare, like a flare we see on the outside of a hoof. If you see a bar folding over and running forward, he likens it to a flare on the underside of the foot, and I think that's a pretty neat way of thinking about that. And for the same reason, we don't like flares on the outside of the hoof wall. We don't like them underneath either on our bars.
Are you okay?
No, no, no. Oh, 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 oh.
Do you have fly spray in your...
No, I don't. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, there are a ton of them.
Okay.
You can go get it whenever you're done.
Okay. There you go. Easy go. Easy girl. Easy girl. Easy. You're okay. Easy. Easy. Good girl. Honey, please.
Whoa, whoa.
That fell off.
Yes, it did. Ta-da! Yeah, not quite the same.
Holy cow, come on out of there. That's gonna be true. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.